know what really makes us mad? Is wasting money on CDs with only one or two good songs.
Yeah. Tell them about punk.
What's up, posers, and welcome to Punk Lotta Pod. I'm your co-host, Justin Hensley.
I'm your other co-host, Dylan Hensley.
And this is the show where we choose one year at random and select one punk, hardcore, emo, or punk-adjacent album from that year to discuss. Today's episode is about an album released in the year 2009, and we'll get into that more shortly. But if you head to patreon.com/punklottapod, that's where you get access to all of our weekly bonus audio. And for $1, you can hear our latest episode of the Extra Play, where, what did we talk about, Dylan?
We talked about the 1989, but not really. It's actually probably 1990 EP I Am by Sam I Am.
Yes, fun-ish episode. I thought we did a pretty good job of pulling out anything we could about that release, because the information was pretty light. And to be fair, I was kind of nervous that the main episode for this week was going to be pretty light on details too. But thankfully I found enough stuff to really talk about, so we're not quite in trouble with this week's episode. But if you sign up for our $5 producer tier, that means you get to vote in an upcoming poll, which I guess we can go ahead and tell you what those poll options are. So, if you want to vote in the poll, sign up for that producer tier, and you can vote on Samuel's Lives of Insects, and Albatross's We Are the Laser Viking, Braid's Closer to Closed, or the Ergs Jersey's Best Prancers. So, if you want to vote in that poll, join that $5 tier. You also get your name said on the show every single week, so shout out to our producers, Dave Brown, writer of the newsletter Oklahoma Lefty, as well as my co-host on Bookenders, which we should be doing one of those soon-ish. Shout out to Zach in Oregon, who just wrote an awesome piece about the Pretty Flowers' newest album. Shout out to Jason W., writer of the newsletter Songs About Chocolate and Girls. An extra special shout out to our friend Steve Long. He's going through it right now. Really hope you get better soon. Steve, please get better soon. And so we could talk to you more in the future. And you can check out his podcast, Rebel Nerd Radio. It's on hiatus right now, but when Steve's ready to go, hopefully it'll be back. But yeah, thinking about you, Steve. Thinking about you, Dave, too. You know, not forgetting everybody. A lot of stuff going on with our friends, sadly. And you could sign up at our $10 tier and choose the album we devote an entire episode to. So all of that, patreon.com/punklautopod. Before we get into the rest of the show, I went and saw a band last night. It's a little band called The Super Chunkies. Last night, saw Super Chunk and Rosalie with our youngest brother, the third Hensley brother. And it was at Eulogy in Asheville, North Carolina. Club I've never been to before. It's fairly new, I believe. Cool venue, set up. I don't know if this building used to be something else, but behind the bar they had these huge organ pipes attached to the taps for the beer. And I don't know if it's called Eulogy. It has a death kind of theme to the entire place. I wonder if this place maybe was a crematorium or maybe even a funeral home or something. It's kind of in a weird location for a music venue. Dylan, you'll know this. It is a block down from where Vortex Donuts is, a block away from downtown. So I guess closer to Grey Eagle. So kind of an odd spot for a venue.
There's a decent amount of stuff down there, actually.
A lot of restaurants.
Yeah. It is not for lack of traffic or being in a bad location that Vortex Donuts went out of business.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Mismanagement.
Oof, yeah. And evil people. Cool venue. Never been there before. I think Napalm Death and Dead Guy are playing there. Oh, and our friend Serrate playing that same show.
Yeah. Eulogy they're connected to Burial Beer?
Yes, that's what it is. Yeah.
So I think that's keeping with the theme.
There's a lot of breweries over in that part of town too, the Wicked Weed breweries over there too, and yeah, a lot of that kind of stuff over there.
Urban Orchard.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I've been to this part of Asheville, this neighborhood in Asheville.
Yeah, I'd never been to this venue before, so it was cool. It sounded good. It was a decent sized venue, kind of I think you looked it up, 500 cap venue, so decent space. It's cool. I would happily go back there for a show. But yeah, Rosalie opened the show up. It it was just her solo, just her and electric guitar, which I realized I've now seen Superchunk do this with like 3 openers. So there's this, Rosalie. They've had Eric Bachman open. He's Archers of Loaf. He has like a bunch of solo records too. He did like an all acoustic show. Just what you want from the guy from Archers and Loaf. And we had Torres.
And that's basically what he's done since Archers of Loaf.
Acoustic guitar rock. Which is not even rock. And then Torres was also like, I don't know if she normally also played as like a solo musician on stage, but yeah, the 3rd time I've seen that. I'm wondering if it makes traveling easier and they can just put her in the van, put him in the van. I think Rosalie was riding with Superchunk, so it might be a case of like save space. We'll just bring a solo musician. But I figured it out. I think this is the 6th time I've seen Superchunk, and I think it was actually our brother's 4th time seeing them now. So one of the bands I've seen, not the most times, but up there. They're close to it. They're getting there. Probably when all is said and done, they will probably eventually become the band I've seen the most live, but who knows. But yeah, it was good to see them. I didn't see them at all last year. I kind of forgot they didn't do a ton. The touring they did do was nowhere near where I was, and then any of the local-ish shows were like kind of last minute, and I couldn't go. But it was 2024's last time I saw them, and yeah, this was the first time I've seen them since Songs in the Key of Yikes came out, so I was really, really looking forward to seeing new songs. And they played about four tracks from the LP. They didn't play Bruise Lung. I wanted them to do Bruise Lung. I thought they would since Rosalie was there, but they didn't. But they did play some fun songs on there, though. They did... This is the 35th anniversary of No Pocky for Kitty, 2026 is. And so they went heavy on No Pocky for Kitty songs. They pulled out 6 tracks from No Pocky, including songs that they said they have not played in 30 years. One is called 30 Extra. Like, that was one where I was like, what is this song? It was one of those songs that, like, it's from No Pocky, but you're just like, which song is this? And that it wasn't until the chorus that I was like, okay, I kind of recognize the song now, but it wasn't one that I knew the name of. Because I think it wasn't reinforced over the years by a song they played live. And they said they hadn't played it in 30 years. But then they played Press from that album as well, which was another song they hadn't played in a very long time. They did wind up playing like 4 more songs from the record, but it was stuff you knew, like Throwing Things and Cast Iron and Skip Steps 1 and 2 and 1 and 3. And yeah, they had it was a good set though. No Seed Toss. I thought that was interesting, but Seed Toss has also been played probably at like 75% of the shows they've ever done. So yeah, that was cool. They played a little bit of everything. Nothing off strings. They didn't play anything off strings, which was surprising. They didn't do Hyper Enough this time. They did do Slack Motherfucker. They always do that one. But when they entered that one, apparently Asheville was the first stop on the first tour Superchunk ever went on, which I didn't know that. And before they entered Slack Motherfucker, and they're like, I'm pretty sure we played this song on that show. So it's like, yeah.
Wow. First stop in what, 90?
Yeah, right? I mean, I don't know when they would have started touring, but yeah, it was... Slack Motherfucker was, like, they only had the earliest songs they had, so... Yeah. 90, maybe. Maybe 91, but...
Yeah, early 90s Asheville. That's a
scene.
What was there?
It was interesting, too, because Jim apparently lived in Asheville for 4 years. Recently.
Huh.
And I didn't know this. Apparently, Jim, guitarist, he for 4 years lived in Asheville, and he worked with his friend cleaning Airbnbs. And I'm wondering, was this a COVID job? Because Superchunk didn't do anything for those couple years. It felt like, so maybe that was his COVID job. He's just like, I gotta do something. I don't know what Jim's day job is, what he does when Superchunk's not touring, because they don't tour all the time, so he has to have another job. But he was talking about how he's like, yes, and every moment felt like a prison, which also made me think maybe there was COVID times where he couldn't do anything fun. Yeah, he's just working. Yeah.
Let me see if I can find it. I just Googled Superchunk Asheville 1990 tour, and I think I'm trying to see if I can actually find the flyer. Where is it? I found something that says Wet Behind the Ears Tour 1990 with Superchunk, Geek, and Seaweed.
Oh.
August 9th, 1990, Asheville, North Carolina, at the Bistro.
I know they had that three-way split in 1990. I guess it made sense for them to tour together on that split. That would have been wild. Seaweed and Superchunk at the same time.
H2O post.
That's funny.
I'm going to keep digging and see if I can find this. But
Yeah, it was a good set, though. It was a weird set. Like, I went back over the set list after they posted a picture of it later, and I was like, this is a weird set. There's a lot of stuff they didn't play that they, like, usually play. They didn't play that stuff. I mean, I guess because it was so emphasizing, like, No Pocky and the newest record, that they were kind of like, all right, that doesn't leave a ton of room for the rest of the catalog. But they pulled out some strange songs, but they really pulled out a deep cut. It was called Cool. It's like a B-side. It's on the Tossing Seeds compilation, the first comp they did. So I think it's a B-side. It must be. I wonder if it's a No Pocky B-side for them to be. I guess I could have looked up what 7-inch Cool came off of. Oh, okay. So Cool came off of the Fishing 7-inch in 1991, February, which I still think that's before No Pocky, because I don't think Fishing is on that record. I think Fishing might be the self-titled, but yeah, deep cut. And Mac was saying, he's like, I still don't know the words of this song. I listened back to it so many times trying to learn it, and I couldn't figure it out. And then he said, like, he looked at Jim and he says, yeah, maybe the vocal should have been higher in the mix. And it was like very obviously that he was making a joke to Jim about, like, we argued about the mix back then. So, very cool. It's a song they said they had literally have not played in 30 years, which is wild. And then they did, like, 100,000 Fireflies, which is the Magnetic Zeros cover, Magnetic Fields cover. Magnetic Zeros is not that. Yeah, but it was a good set. It was a weird set, which is kind of what I want now. You know, I've seen the big songs live enough, and I've listened to enough bootleg recordings and live albums. Like, I've listened to all the Clambake. There's like 9 Clambake live albums. So I've heard a lot of the big songs a billion times, and live. I've seen them 6 times now, and they're songs that they've played, like, every time. Like, Learn to Surf, one of my all-time favorite songs, but, like, I've seen them play that song so many times that it's just kind of like, okay, I'm more interested in seeing a set like this that was heavy on stuff that I've never heard before. So, very cool set. I was really happy with it. And yeah, had a good time. So if you see Superchunk this year, there's a high chance it's going to be a very No Pocky heavy. I wouldn't be surprised if they wind up pulling out more album cuts, because Superchunk changes their set every night. It's not the same set every night. Now, there's certain songs they'll play, but from night to night, they change it up, which I appreciate, actually. Any look?
Yeah. I can't find a flyer. I can find some other flyers from that tour, but it was Seaweed, Superchunk, and Geek.
Yeah. Yeah, they had that split, 3-way split.
So, yeah, Three's Company. There's a little advertisement for that. The single that goes with the tour featuring Geek and Superchunk and Seaweed.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was a fun show, though. I'll see them again. It'll probably be a year. But this was the one time where I was like, man, this is probably the easiest I could have followed them. I could have done a Grateful Dead tour with them, because they went to Atlanta. They're in Atlanta tonight, as of this recording. They're playing Columbia the next night, South Carolina. And then they're playing Chapel Hill, Scarborough, Saturday. So it's like, oh, if I didn't have to work, I could have followed Superchunk on tour very easily. Maybe I'll do that one year when it finally is. I can do it. But yeah, it's kind of fun. Because, like I said, different sets every night. So do you have any artists that is your Grateful Dead, in the sense that you'll listen to bootlegs and like any live recording that comes across your way?
No, not really. I rarely want to hear live recordings.
I don't usually, but for them I do, so it's fun. But yeah, that's what we did. My first show of the year. Got some more lined up this year, so hopefully I'm gonna try and go to that Napalm Death Dead Guy show, especially since Serate's playing. I don't know that I'll stay for the full Napalm Death set, but you never know. I'm not a huge Napalm Death fan. And Fishbone's playing next week. I don't think I'm gonna go to that one though. But yeah, a lot of shows coming up that I'd like to go to. Do you have anything you want to kind of shout out, or we want to get into the show?
No, nothing really to plug right now.
Yeah, we could do more pluggy type stuff at the end. But yeah. All right, well, then cool. So this week's episode, we're talking about an album released in 2009, and it was my turn to pick. But before we get into that, what came out in the year 2009? What is going on in punk rock and all its assorted subgenres?
So in 2009, I I kind of imposed some limitations. There was a point at which I didn't feel like I wanted to make this section carry on forever. But something that I didn't get into specifically that I do think is something to mention. 2009, still very heavy on mall, emo, screamo stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get into the weeds of listing any of the specifics for that because honestly, there was so much of it that I was overwhelmed, and I felt like, I mean, for us personally, like we were almost entirely out of that scene in '09, and I felt like this is still just that would be like talking about the last days of hair metal. It's just like, yeah, they were still around. I don't know.
I mean, they're still around now, a lot of that stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, it's the same with all of these emo screamo bands. They're all still around.
Yeah.
And maybe another time in this era, if it were an earlier year, I would feel more inclined to want to list that stuff because it's a little more vital and it's not so stale. But by this point, '09, it still feels very stale to me. The closest I got to that, though, I'll say there's a lot of mathcore stuff that is interesting because it's like 3 generations of it.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Because you've got granddaddies like Converge putting out Axe to Fall and Coalesce putting out Ox, which that Coalesce, that's a comeback record.
Yeah.
And you have their children, someone like The Chariot, arguably Gaza. They both have records that year. Gaza being, I think, probably same generation as The Chariot, but younger, And then there's Narrows.
Yeah.
Which is started in 2008.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, there's a Varellin in there, so arguably.
I think there's 2 Varellins, right?
No, it's just Dave.
Oh, okay. Ben didn't actually play it, but okay. He's just a gear guy.
Yeah. But in terms of what's a little more of the moment, well, okay, let me say this. Also kind of stale at this point, and I think almost on fumes, is the brown pants metal stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The Atmos sludge.
Smart metal.
Post metal. You've got older bands still going. Mastodon's Crack the Sky. Baroness put out Blue record. They're like on their way to just becoming like a radio rock version of what they were. ISIS put out Wavering Radiant, which is their last record.
Yeah.
And then you got some other, kind of crusty stuff. Kylesa, Static Tensions, Fall of Afrafa. And there's a lot of grind going on. This like late 2000s and into the early 2010s. It's kind of funny, and I don't think that I've ever really connected the dots, but metalcore giving way to deathcore and bringing up a lot of association with like death grind is sort of connected to the Nails cursed kind of extremely heavy Deathwish Southern Lord hardcore stuff. But
yeah, because a lot of that did have that grind element to their sound. Yeah.
Like a Dead in the Dirt or Torch Runner.
Yeah.
Those are a little bit more obscure, but but yeah, there's a bunch of grind stuff. There's a Napalm Death record, Brutal Truth record. There's more punk leaning stuff, like Weekend Nachos and Magruder Grind. More power violence-y stuff. Graf Orlock did Destination Time Today.
Yeah, I thought about that one for a minute. We'll get into like my thought process on choosing and everything, but 2009 was a kind of a weird year to pull from, but we'll get into that more. But I had thought about that Graf Orlock, but I was like, maybe not that record.
And then what's a little bit more in the moment, I think, and kind of guiding where punk would go over the next few years. We've got kind of a commercialization of folk punk happening. AJJ goes electric with Can't Maintain.
Mm-hmm.
Jeffrey Lewis and the Junkyard put out MRI. That's a little bit, I mean, arguably it's anti-folk, but...
Yeah, which AJJ was turning anti-folk, too.
Yeah.
They get, like, the anti-folk tag at times. It's like, I wouldn't call them anti-folk because we know they come directly out of the folk punk scene, but, yeah.
Fake Problems is doing, like, the Gaslight Anthem version of folk punk.
Yeah.
And I guess the one true folk punk here is Wingnut Dishwashers Union. Burn the earth, leave it behind.
Yeah. Yeah, the Pat the Bunny various folk punk bands, that's your true punks. True folk punks. That's your real train hopping punks.
Until he quit heroin and found God.
Is he Jesus-y now?
I don't know. That's what somebody said.
Oh, weird.
One time. I was like, really?
I doubt that because he's saying
I know
about
he quit heroin, but...
atheism a lot. Yeah, we know about the heroin thing. He got off the heroin. I don't know when. I think between Johnny Hobo and Wingnut. I think his heroin story is not as long as people think it might be.
And then in 2009, something we were certainly pretty aware of, we've got the emo revival. Not quite raging.
No. '09 is like the beginnings of it.
Well, it's like, yeah, when there's more than one band. Yeah.
Yeah.
When it's more than just Algernon.
Yeah, yeah.
Street Smart Cyclist.
Yeah. No one was listening to Street Smart Cyclist that didn't already live in Philly at the time.
But Empire, I Was a Lonely Estate, they put out an album that I left the name off of. I don't know which one it is. It's the one with the pink bar at the top, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, yeah.
Castavet put out Summer Fences. Not enough people were talking about or listening to that.
I think that's our gateway into emo revival, too.
Yeah. Well, sort of.
It was the Castavet 7-inch, or the Summer Fences, and the Snowing 7-inch, which also came out in 2009, which I was like, could we get away with doing a whole episode on Snowing's EP? I thought about it.
Yeah. It would just be the story of the whole band. Whatever Snowing release we did.
Yeah, the LP.
You may as well just do the LP and talk about how the EP was better.
Yeah.
That would give me an excuse to dig my 7-inch out. I have that one somewhere.
Yeah, I still have mine too.
Found it at High Voltage in Asheville.
Do you have the original one, or do you have the photo one?
It's like a blue illustrated cover, right?
Yeah, that's the original, yeah. There's like a photo cover, they reissued it later.
Yeah, I have the original copy.
Yeah, me too.
I'm pretty sure. Well,
Still so good.
Now I feel like I need to go dig it out.
It's fine.
I'll look at it later.
Worth noting, Grown Ups put out songs that year too. That was their EP.
Yeah. It was a lot of EPs. Not
at this
as
stage,
many
yeah.
LPs, but weirdly enough, My Heart to Joy had an LP out.
Wild. I mean,
so early.
It's also like a crunchier, more like post-hardcore version of emo. You know, I feel like it's more indebted to like Braid and Small Brown Bike than the twinkly stuff, but still, cool record.
But pre-World Is.
Yeah.
That's Greg and Chris. Shitty Greg.
Oh, is it? I don't think I realized that.
Yeah. He's not shitty. That's just his nickname.
Yeah, that's his Twitter handle or something.
Into It Over It put out the 52 Weeks
Project. That's not an album.
time.
It's not an album. It's a project.
Yeah. Oh, but we listened to it.
Yeah, I probably only finished it once though. It's one of those ones that I would put on and I'm like, this is too long. I don't finish it. It's probably an hour and a half long.
And then we have a lot of screamo stuff and sort of post-hardcore stuff that I would say is a precedent to what is called the waves. This is the proto-wave. And I've always honestly had a bone to pick with the years that people like the wave is like 2011.
Mm-hmm.
This is 2009, and there's a Touche Amore record.
Yeah. I mean, it's the first one.
Yeah. There's a Commandre record, that is one of the records that all those bands were influenced by. There's all those screamo bands.
Yeah.
Ditro put out Y. Said Non Satiata put their self-titled record out. Loma Prieta had Dark Mountain. Loma Prieta had like Loma Prieta had like an album a year from like 2006 for like 4 years. They took so long to be a big band. Like it was weird when they made it onto Death Wish, and I was like, they're still together?
Yeah. And they also kind of changed they also kind of changed their sound too. Like it stopped being like so much screamo and then kind of getting into like, I don't even know. There's like a gothic element to a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. And it's the late 2000s. We can talk about millennial optimism and its cooler cousin, Indie Surf. Waves put out their self-titled record. Shannon and the Clams put out a record. There's that Girls album and a Real Estate album. They kind of get the Indie Surf tags. It's not the biggest year for that Indie Surf stuff, but
Waves were a big piece of that.
Yeah.
Sound. I saw Waves. They did that weird Adult Swim festival thing. Bizarre thing they did. I can't believe Warner just had that much money to waste on a traveling festival with games and t-shirt making stand. It was like everything was free too.
2009, Scion put on a massive free metal festival.
Yeah. Can we have free shows again like that? I mean, I had to watch Waves, but pre-landlord. Waves guy's a landlord. Yeah, that was... See, the indie surf stuff is like, oh, this is like the embarrassing trend. Like, this trend was big. And it's like, why? Why was this a thing? We all listened to Pet Sounds and decided that's what we're going to start doing. Except not sound anything like Pet Sounds.
Yeah, it was more like we all were listening to early Beach Boys records for some reason.
And then we put a shit ton of reverb on everything. Man. Well, 2009 was my turn to choose, and the stuff I was considering, it was the year of, not that one though, because I mentioned this one to you specifically, so I sent you my options, and I considered Hell is Empty by Ruiner, and that was the first thing you said. He's like, I wish it was the other Ruiner. It's like, yeah, I do too. Because that's a great record. This one's fine, and this one's good too, but it's just like, it's not the one. It's not the big one, you know? Prepare to be Let Down, I think is what that was called. That's a great record. Love that album. Ruiner weirdly keeps popping up in history too. Like, members of Ruiner just keep on going on to do other things. Like, there's like a band that started last year that's like Ruiner members. So it's kind of funny that Ruiner just kind of keep going. But not the band. They definitely quit. This was their last record. I think it might have been like, we knew it was the last record too. Another consideration, Advent, Naked and Cold. This is Joe Mustin, I think Dusty from Beloved are also in this band. Actually, maybe a couple Beloved guys. I think like 3 guys from Beloved in Advent. But this was the like all hardcore band that members of Beloved started right after Beloved called it quits. They got rid of Josh Moore and they're like, we just want to be a hardcore band. So they did 2 records, and this was one that I was like, I wish it was Remove the Earth. That was their first record, and it's the better record than Naked and Cold. But it's a good record. It's very much like a Buried Alive style of hardcore. They specifically were like, Buried Alive was the influence for this record. So it was like, they were mainly pulling from one album as influence, but it's pretty good. And then I also consider The Cosmic Drama by Weatherbox. And this is another case of, I don't think that's the Weatherbox to do. I think it was my intro to Weatherbox, but I don't think, it's like a half acoustic record. And they weren't like an acoustic band, so it's kind of like a strange one in the catalog too. But I think either album on each side of this record is probably the better Weatherbox album to do. But yeah, this one is funny. Weatherbox was like putting out records during the emo revival phase, but was very much like, I think Weatherbox is from the like kind of lost period of the like more traditional emo of the 2000s. They weren't a revival band. And they would get kind of lumped in with the revival bands later, because they would sign to one of those labels that was putting all that stuff out. Run for Cover or No Sleep, one of those two. But they never really felt like they fit, because they were just, you could just tell. It was like a different kind of thing that was trendy at the time. But I always liked Weatherbox, though. But yeah, it was a lot of stuff like that. the things that I passed over, it was a lot of stuff from artists that we've covered recent-ish that I love the albums from, but I just didn't. I was like, we talked about them not that long ago, so I didn't feel like talking about them. So it was kind of tough for me to choose which of these albums to even do, because like a good chunk of them were ones I didn't even want. It wasn't the one I wanted from them. So I was like, well, I don't want to waste my Ruiner and my Advent and my Weatherbox picks on not that one, though. So I decided to go with the one that I just liked the best out of the 4 that I chose. So the album we are talking about today, it is Brainworms 2, Swear to Me. Stats on the band. From Richmond, Virginia. This was released February 20th, 2009 on Rorschach Records. It is their first proper full-length studio album. And the personnel on this record is Jay Moritz on bass, Joe Hunt on drums, Brendan Trake on guitar, left, Josh Small on guitar, right, and Greg Butler on vocals. And it was recorded by Steve Roche and mastered by Carl Saff and Paul Gold.
All right, so why did you pick this one?
Kind of told you already, but it's just the one I liked the best out of these 4.
Of those records that you were considering, this is the one that you can best make a case for being the one to do. Right.
Because this is the only like true LP. We'll talk about the other LP that they put out, but it's not a studio album. It wasn't the record to choose from those other 3 artists that I had nominated. I like, and Snowing was a strong consideration for me, and then you kind of were like, we could do the LP, just do the whole story, which is true, you know. Like, Summer Fences is probably one of my favorite records of the entire year, but we've already done The Echo and the Light, and I don't think there's that much of a different story. In fact, The Echo and the Light actually had a story, because it was like different mixes, different recording sessions, multiple versions of that record. There's not that much of a story to Summer Fences other than they won't put it on vinyl for whatever fucking reason. But now it's too late. Nobody cares now. There was a reason for it, though. I think when Hugo talked about it, he's like, there's a reason. It's like, I don't think they wanted to do it. I think there's a holdout in the band or something like that. But yeah, I mean, it really is the one that I just liked the best. It's the band that, I don't know if there's any other opportunity that Brainworms were going to be a record that we covered. So yeah, that's kind of why I went with that one. What's your background on Brainworms? I think you introduced them to me, so I think you kind of are the reason why I even listened to them.
Yeah, Brainworms, man, I don't think I could pinpoint exactly where I came across them, but I know it was very much from that time period where I'm looking at block spots all the time, and I wouldn't be surprised, though I don't know for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if I found Brainworms on Zen and the Art of Face Punching.
Interesting.
Feels like the kind of blog that I might have found their stuff on. I can't remember if I started listening to them, when I started listening to them.
My Last FM has them being played in 2009.
Yeah. Yeah, mine is only in 2009. January of '09. So right at the beginning of the year
Yeah.
is where I would have come across them. So...
And it's which is worse. It's not even this record. It's the one before.
I have both in January of '09.
Oh, did you? Oh, okay. Maybe it just took me a minute to listen to the second one. It looks like I don't listen to the second one until 2010. At least on, Last FM. June 2009 and December. So then I probably listened to 2, like, right away.
So I can definitely tell you why I was interested in this band. I definitely would have found them on a blog spot. They probably were compared to bands like Sinaloa. There's Wow Owls members in the band, right?
No.
No.
No Wow Owls.
So probably compared to Wow Owls.
Mm-hmm.
I was really into a lot of those bands that were these like kind of post-hardcore bands, and they were a lot of it I called screamo, and somebody from Brainworms was definitely in Stop It. And
yeah, there is.
I had listened to Stop It a ton by that point, so I would have just come across them as being members of or compared to those kinds of bands, and so I was just like, "Yep, this is catnip for me. I love this shit." Like,
yeah.
Somebody reference Life at These Speeds, and I'm interested. Like so much like Richmond screamo and post-hardcore stuff, and Virginia screamo and post-hardcore stuff that I was into. And I mean, I was generally into like all of the obscure screamo stuff that was coming out in 2008, 9. But yeah, particularly, I really resonated with those bands that were not really screamo bands, but I called them screamo bands. And they were always just this kind of like weird arty kind of indie-ish post-hardcore.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely like Dylancore. This is definitely the kind of thing that you were known to be listening to. You had a reputation.
Tiger. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. You were known to be listening to this kind of stuff at the time. I liked a lot of it too, but like you just got deeper into it than anyone else that we kind of really hung out with or knew.
Yeah, and I didn't know anybody else that was into it.
Yeah.
I mean, Tumblr, I guess.
Yeah, Tumblr.com. That's how we found a lot of stuff. I'm trying to figure out, were we already into Self-Defense Family by this point, or end of a year?
Let's see. The LP was 2010.
The 7-inch, the self-titled 7-inch is like the first thing.
That was
09.
Yeah.
67 Scrabbles.
Yeah. I remember listening to that EP a lot that summer.
Okay. Yeah. So this is probably where, because I was listening to a lot of End of a Year, and I could see this being like a hop and a step away from what End of a Year were doing. There is a Rev Summer emo-core element to Brainworms, which this is probably the time period where I was getting into that particular sound. And so, yeah, it was probably like bumped up close enough or overlapped partially enough to the point that I was like, this is cool. I like this. I like this Brainworms band. And it's funny, when I sent you the list of stuff that I was nominating, you were like, Brainworms is so obscure though. And I guess out of those options, they probably are the most obscure of those 4 bands that I could have nominated. But at the same time, I kind of don't even care. Like I had a hard time choosing in 09. It was not sending me lots of strong options for me to consider that I actually would consider. There's great stuff that year, like I said, but not what I was kind of dealing with here. But yeah, spent some time with Brainworms. We did see them. They played Fest one year. It was a reunion show. And yeah, that's like the one time we saw them. And I don't think they did much more after that either. They did like the one-off show, and then they may have did something in Richmond around the time, but nothing really else after that. So we figured out their sound. They're doing like a post-hardcore thing, not too far away. What else is going on in this sound? Or close to it sound?
So, Brainworms was weird. They were a pretty unique band. The stuff that's closest to it from this time period, Victor Fix the Sun.
Yeah.
Victor Fix the Sun was like a more serious version of Brainworms.
Yeah, I can see that. And a little more emo, too.
Yeah. There's Tubers, who they did a split with. have an LP, Anachronist, that year. That's a pretty similar sounding band. Spires in 1994 had a split that year. That's like a split LP, I think. I didn't even get into the EPs. There's probably a lot more EPs that are closer.
Yeah.
Sinaloa, who I was definitely really into at this time period, I would have definitely associated with Brainworms in that kind of not quite screamo post-hardcore stuff that I was into. They have a record called Chapels and Basement that year. Bats have an album. They were kind of an arty, sassy-ish kind of post-hardcore band. Red and Tooth and Claw was that record.
I don't remember that band at all.
I remember the album cover more than I remember. I might have heard it, but I saw the album cover a lot. And so when I was trying to find the Also Rans, that one popped up, and I was like, yeah, okay, sure. I'll throw that on there.
Oh, I remember that cover. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
They're
a little harder. Like, I almost put, like, that Towers record on there, but it's like, that's such a hard band.
Yeah.
Haymarket Riot has a record. They're maybe a little bit more hardcore. Everything else here is kind of a little bit more something else, but similar-ish bands, I think. Dan and Aykroyd is like the poppy version.
And From Across the Pond.
They're doing that dancey, mathy thing.
I considered that record. It was a soft consideration, which we get those where, like, you think about it for a second before you actually choose it.
Yeah.
I will say, I went through the 2009 year several times before I landed on this record, too. I was having a hard time deciding. I think because I had also just done 2011, like, a few weeks ago. It was like, it's so close in time periods that I was like, too similar to each other. But
there's a band called Double Dagger. They were like a Baltimore band. And I recognized the name more than anything, but kind of sassy. Similar to like that Poison Arrows record too. That's a little more math rocky. Ex-Don Cab members there.
Yeah. Not the ones who did Battles?
I don't think there's overlap. I think it's different people. And similarly shambolic, angular, punk adjacent music. Shinobu has put out Strange Spring Air, and Hard Girls put out the Hello EP, which I would have been listening to that Hard Girls record in 2009, I think. So I definitely associate them with Brainworms. Just being that kind of stuff. I got something similar out of them. I always felt like that real early Hard Girl stuff was like a more straightforward, mellow version of some Bear vs. Shark stuff.
So this record was released on Rorschach 2009. So that same year, they released the Environmental Youth Crunch and Mouth Breather split. So I was definitely already into Mouth Breather at this point. Love that band. Mouth Breather has the Wow Owls members. That's what you were thinking of. You were thinking of the other Richmond band. This is also the same year as Field Day's Christian Television and Snack Truck's Special Findings 1 through 7, which is members of Ultra Dolphins and VCR. Remember VCR? No one else does. Side One Dummy Records band whose gimmick was synthesizers. And the producer of this record, Steve Roche, in 2009 also produced Black Kite's advancement to Ruin, the Peregrine Orange split, and then releases by The Catalyst, Witch Hunt, and Towers, who you just mentioned. So we'll do a little bit of the story. Not a ton there either. This is another one that I had a hard time finding a deep story on, but, there's a little bit more here. So, prior to Brainworms, Joe Hunt played in the Richmond hardcore band Are You Fucking Serious? Brendan Drake played in Municipal Waste for their very first EP, but he was also in Stop It and The Flesh Eating Creeps, which that band had members of Worn and Red and Light the Fuse and Run. I think Chris Terry, also the author, who was also in Light the Fuse and Run, was in that band. As well as the band El Araira? That's a tough name. I probably butchered that one. And then guitarist Josh Small, he had done some solo albums at the time, but he was mainly known for playing on albums by Tim Barry and Chuck Reagan. So we have a full acoustic punk troubadour guy in Brainworms. And it was always funny to me because I would see his name on fest lineups and it would be like parentheses Brainworms. And it would be like, the lead singer of Brainworms has a acoustic side project? It wasn't the lead singer of Brainworms, it was the guitarist. When I didn't know their names. But so prior to this, they released their live demo on CDR in 2006. This was recorded live in studio, so it is still a studio recording, but there were people in the studio too. They followed that up with a cassette called Is This Real? On Control-C, Control-V. Both that demo and the cassette were collected for vinyl and CD on the album Which Is Worse, which is where Rorschach Records comes in. So they released those two together, which there are the same songs on those two releases. So it's kind of a weird listening experience when you listen to the CD version or the LP version, because it's got both versions of the songs on there. So it's kind of weird to hear. So at this point, it was kind of thought of that the band was done. And they then reunite to release a split 7-inch with The Catalyst in 2007, another Richmond band. They followed that in 2008 with the split with the Tubers and another split with a band called Dynamite Arrows. Guitarist Josh Small, he is a replacement guitarist for the previous guitarist Tim Morris, who was also in Ultra Dolphins, and then he joined the band in time to record the split with Tubers. So Rorschach, we mentioned them briefly, was a record label started by Curtis Grimstead of a band called A Roman Holiday. He started Rorschach to put out his own music and then would eventually start putting out music by other bands, most notably, up to this point, Pink Razors, Antlers, and The Midwestern. And this album was recorded at Permanent Hearing Damage in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, with off-minor drummer Steve Roche. Steve previously worked with the bands The Saddest Landscape, Mischief Brew, Armalite, Joshua Fit for Battle, Neil Perry, The Red Scare, and Zagoda. So Steve Roche was kind of a go-to guy for this kind of thing. Makes sense. Off-minor was a pretty popular band. More screamo, I guess, is how you would describe that band, but cool band. And this record was released on CD and vinyl, and I think it's the last thing they put out, too. All right, well, what did you think of Brainworms 2, revisiting it?
It's about what I remember it being.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think a lot of this stuff, I kind of ran my course with. You know, I got my mileage out of it. I got more mileage than most people, probably. And so I don't need to go back to it, really, because I remember a lot of it very, very well, because I listened to it so much. But that being said, like, I still liked it. Like, I still like it. When I listen to this, I don't have the reaction to maybe some things that I was really obsessed with, where I go, why was I so into this? Like, I loved this, and I don't want to hear it now. But, like, I hear this, and I'm like, I like what they're doing still. I think this is kind of cool. And even though, like, this record in particular, and, like, this band in particular, I can kind of make connections to, you know, what I liked about it and what it reminded me of then, I still get something out of it now that is unique. I don't really hear exactly in anyone else. So I think there's still something to get out of listening to a Brainworms record. And I don't think any of the guys in Brainworms probably thought when they were making it that they were gonna make records that someone would want to hear 20 years later. You know, I think this kind of band, especially with them all, you know, being in a bunch of different bands and the scene that they came from, so much of it was just people living in the moment and making weird art and not really expecting longevity because their bands didn't last a long time. I think Brainworms lasted a surprisingly long time for what they are, for the scene that they were in, and how all those members were in all those different bands, And it was so commonplace for a band from this time period and this kind of music to just be like, yeah, we did a demo.
Yeah.
We did an EP. We did a couple splits. It was, they lived short lives, and I don't think anybody that was making music like that would think that, it would hold as much water as it does. And maybe they don't think so. I don't know. Maybe they look back on it and cringe. I think musicians often do, but
Yeah, it is funny to think about, like, when you kind of just get, like, really into a specific sound and a specific type of thing at one point in your life. And while I still like stuff like this, it's definitely a style of music that I do enjoy. When I do go back and listen to some of the stuff from this era and, like, in this style, I am sometimes surprised by being like, I thought this was, like, way better than it was. Like, in my mind, I built it up as being like, this is phenomenal. And then I guess maybe I just didn't have enough experience or listen to enough other things to really kind of feel it out better. But it is funny to go back to some of this era and be like, okay. Like, Victor Fix the Sun is the perfect example, because I was obsessed with that band whenever, I think Fix Me is the record that came out this year, is the 2009 record, which I think is one we also covered on the show with good friend Corey. And I remember listening back to that being like, wow, this was not as good as I remember. I remember being so into that record and not really liking it that much when I revisited it. And that's not to say I did this with Brainworms, but it's just like getting hyperfixated on a style, finding every band who plays that style, and then like you said, getting your fill of it and moving on to something else. And then you come back and then you're like, wow, I was really into that, wasn't I? That's interesting. So yeah, I do think there's something to it. I also do feel like, though, Brainworms is also kind of late for what they're doing. I know they kind of stuck around a little longer than a lot of those other bands did, but this feels more in line with the early 2000s, not the late 2000s. Like, this should be, it's the members of Stop It, but it's like, yeah, Brainworms belongs next to Stop It, Light the Fuse and Run, a lot of that Wow Owls. It really feels like it belongs in that specific scene. Mouth Breather was the Wow Owls band, so I guess Mouth Breather and Brainworms were kind of like, we're carrying the spirit of the early 2000s, like post-hardcore, but it's not exactly Screamo, but it's kind of got a lot in common with Screamo. So, yeah, it feels weird. Brainworms don't feel like they belong in 2009. They feel like they belong in 2004. But I was grateful they did exist because I really enjoyed the record back then. I was a fan of this album. When they played Fest, I was super stoked to see them play. And I don't know, it's cool. I think this, like, 08 to 08 to 2011 is, like, my most obsessive period for stuff like this, and looped in with emo revival. All of this was, like, emo revival adjacent, too, to me. So, yeah, it was just, like, a time period where I guess I just burned out on it, too. Could be part of it. And then all the next wave of bands just all sucked. I didn't like most of the next part of the wave. The wave, I don't like most of those bands. And Brainworms aren't really part of that wave, but what they're doing sonically is more aligned with the bands that inspired the wave. So, and some of their past bands probably inspired the wave. I assume you were a mega Stop It fan by this point.
Yeah, I was really into that band.
That band with one record.
A record and an EP.
Yeah. Maybe we'll do a Stop It record one day. I'd be interested to look back at that record and see.
Yeah, it's the EP is called the Enhanced Demo.
It means they probably mastered it.
Like 2 compilation appearances. I have the LP, the EP, and one of the compilations. One of them wasn't ever done on vinyl. I have that Wayfarers All comp.
Yeah. It's kind of funny. I've been doing the guest list, and I've got one coming up where we're going to be talking about obscure and deep cuts again, which was similar to what we did with Tim from Pop Kid. And I feel like that's going to be probably the most popular theme, or the popular prompt that people are going to choose whenever we're doing guest list episodes. But I thought about it, like, would Stop It be one that you would have thrown on that list of, like, if you were on the show and you were picking it, would you pick that Stop It record as one of your favorite, like, obscure, lesser known records?
Today? I don't know.
Yeah. I think about it sometimes. I'm like, if I had to make this list, what would I choose? You know?
Yeah. I have to think about that. How many records do you pick? 5?
3 to 5, whatever.
3 to 5.
Whatever you feel like, choosing. So, yeah. And then we've gone over, like, the first 2. Like, the first 2 had 6, so. No, the first 3 had 6. Everybody went over. Dave just labeled his an honorable mention. But, yeah. Yeah, that's tough. I like a lot of obscure stuff. And then sometimes I'm like, is it actually that obscure? That's also another question you have to ask yourself, but... So, I guess as far as this record goes in particular, revisiting it for me, I was surprised at how much it blended together. Like, sonically, these songs, a lot of them sound the same.
Yeah, that's true.
Because when I was making notes and doing the, keeping track of each song as it comes through the record, like, there were a couple times where I was like, oh, I missed that one had ended and the next one had started, and I didn't even realize it. The only thing that made me realize it was like, this has been going for a while. This might be a different song. And the sameness isn't necessarily a complaint, though. Like, and I don't even know that it's even necessarily samey. I think something about their music, it is very busy. There is a lot happening in this band. This is a 5-piece band. 2 guitarists, and they're all nonstop. Nobody stops on this record. There's a few instances where, like, it's just the bass mainly, but, like, there's so much happening on this record that, like, I listened to it and I was like, the first couple times, if you're not paying super close attention to what's happening, it kind of gets muddy and it kind of, like, gets away from you. But when I was, like, listening closer for the intent of making notes, I was like, okay, I'm hearing a lot happening with these guitars, especially the guitars. There is so much going on with these 2 guitarists because they're both doing noodly guitars. And then they do, like, the big chunky riffs, but, like, there's just a lot of, like, when the vocals are going, there's just a lot of busy noodly guitars happening underneath while he's singing. I think the bass is driving a majority of the songs on this record. It's not so much the guitar work. I don't think it's the best mix. I think a better mix would probably make those things stand out a little better, and they wouldn't blend together as much.
Yeah. The guitars are very similar tones. They're just not different enough from each other.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they are different from each other. They're different in what they're playing.
Yeah, but I mean, like, yeah, but they're not doing, you're right, their, like, guitar tone is not different.
Yeah. They needed to kind of say, all right, you're more high end and I'm more low, or one's more mid forward, one more scooped. It would help with the separation. Even though they are split left
Channels.
and right.
Yeah.
It still gets pretty messy.
Yeah, it's a rough mix. But maybe it's more of a production, like, yeah, you're right. Maybe they could have just chosen, like, a different. But you could kind of differentiate some of that in the mixing process, too. So, yeah, I don't know whose fault necessarily it is, but yeah, to me, like, there's a lot going on. It's, like, kind of weird, busy guitar work. To me, like, the most standout guitar parts or just like the big riffs, the ba da 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 da, but it's also very like choppy riffs too. Some of it sounds like upstrokes in places. So there's one song that's like very upstroked. And even the bass tone is like got a lot of gain in it too, which like this doesn't help the mix. Like it's a very gain heavy bass tone. Maybe there's some distortion on it, but I think the drums are busy too. There's a lot. It's just a busy record, in general. But I kind of enjoy the overall feel and vibe of the record. I have a good time when I listen to this. I think Greg is a great vocalist. Not that he's like a great singer, but just like he has a lot of energy. Seeing him live was a hoot. He was so much fun live. He kind of like bounced around his head a lot, just like the way he just bounced his head while he sang. He did the, what's his name from Fucked Up, take his shirt off type thing, but
yeah. I was while I was listening to this record, I was trying to figure out who he sounds like, what he's doing, and like what it reminds me of, because to my ears now, it's not exactly what I maybe would have associated it with then. And it's almost like he's doing like a Pure Ubu Jello Biafra kind of weird art punk frontman thing more than what anybody else was doing in a post-hardcore band at this time.
To me, vocally, he kind of sounds like a mix of two we've already talked about, but it sounds like a little bit of a mix of the guy from Mouth Breathers and Pat from End of a Year. Like he kind of feels like the between of those two voices. But I hear what you're saying too. I did see a review that also specifically mentioned Jello Biafra.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear that. Also, a lot of reviews I read kept saying he's like, this guy's a dead ringer for the dude from Less Savvy Fav.
That, yeah, I see.
He looks just like him.
He looks like him too, yeah.
And they act like
Savvy Fav as a band
stage.
That band was more of a template than I ever knew.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of bands that were inspired by them.
Yeah, I didn't realize, because I never really listened to them. I've heard songs, but I was not an album guy with them. I never tried any records out with them. Were they any good? I don't even remember. They're kind of sassy, right?
Yeah, they were doing sass, but with like a chubby bearded guy.
Yeah. It kind of feels like a more mainstream version of what Brainworms were kind of doing too, in some ways. But not a ton of like story I could find. I couldn't find any interviews really either. But I found a decent amount of reviews, so I figured I would take a look at some of these reviews. So we'll start with the RVA magazine review, and they wrote about them a few times. So this piece, though, starts with, compulsively schemed from beginning to end, Brainworm's second full-length release, Swear to Me, insists your full attention. Opening strong with the persistent vocals, invade the decadently melodic Let's Be Honest, Jay's Big Date, and Half a Life, then recede graciously for the first of two instrumental intermissions. Sandwiched between the lyricless pieces lies an epic triumvirate. Somebody got a thesaurus for Christmas on this one. Which words flays with transcendently schizophrenic changes in tone, destroying your preconceptions or Alright, what did John Cooper Clarke write this? Destroying your preconceptions in preparation for the highlight of the album, Ropes Course. Whatever That's How You Get Famous follows assertively, however, with a spoken word rant set to increasingly convulsive chaos. The peak of the album's intelligent fun. The second lyrical break, the pinnacle of storytelling, gives you only a moment of feverishly melodic relaxation. A lot of big words there, but I do like that it kind of lays out the record a little bit. It kicks off with those three really good high energy tracks in a row, and then hits that first instrumental track. We could have mentioned there are two instrumentals on here. The first one is Vulgar Display of Flowers. By the way, probably one of the funniest names for a song ever. Love that. And the other one was Lottery Balls. Was the other? No, wait, that's not it. It's the Pinnacle Storytelling, which we just mentioned. Yeah, Lottery Balls is the second to last track. Scene Point Blank did a piece on it. So Greg Butler comes across as a sweaty, ranting madman, and I imagine a lot of broken items flying through the air while he howls into the mic like an ADD David Yao. For a little range, he For as little range as he shows as a singer, the songs differentiate themselves very well, relying not only on the record's arrangements, but also the rhythm section's ability to steer the angling guitars in different directions. The guitars remind me of Big Black's clanging style, but more relentless and violent, with Small and Trake doubtlessly having thick calluses from beating their instruments for such an extensive amount of time. So that's a slightly different angle. David Yao, Big Black, what do you think about those comps for this?
They don't make any sense to me.
I think they were just like, fat guy without a shirt off, David Yao. Like,
It's noisy.
It's noisy. It's like, it's noisy, but it's not noise rock. It's different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Invoking Jesus Lizard and Big Black in the same piece gives a completely different impression of what the record actually sounds like. It doesn't sound like either one of those things. This is not Albini Core. Razor Cake did a little piece on it, and it says, I can't say that Brainworms is simply Revolution Summer-esque. Think of Revolution Summer as a bookend with maybe Antioch Arrow on the other end of the shelf, but Brainworms' influences aren't used as a crutch to hold them up. Initially, their approach seems to be simply frantic and maniacal, with vocals that never let up, remaining constantly abrasive. Antioch Arrow. I get the Rev Summer, because I made that connection myself.
Antioch Arrow I can see. That's an early sass band.
Yeah, the San Diego-ness
Yeah.
makes them different from, I guess you would consider Antioch Arrow. Is that considered Screamo? I guess it's kind of early, right?
Early, yeah.
I hear it. I hear where they're coming from with that comp. It's better than the other comp, but... here's a Maximum Rock and Roll piece. I found so many reviews from website and magazines, but like not very many interviews. It's funny. Nobody wanted to talk to them. This piece says, great hardcore in the Give Me Back / Heart Attack post Rites of Spring vein, featuring ex-members of Stop It. But this is way less plotting than I remember Stop It sounding, and some of the riffs are way more killer and more pronounced in the mix. A Wow Owls reference wouldn't be too off base. I really like the Brainworms' last LP, and I was stoked to see that on this outing, these fellas had the sense not to put the same songs on both sides of the record. There are a few times I wouldn't mind hearing the singer develop a little bit more of a flair for melody, but most of the time he solidly rocks shit. The lyrics are really clever, and the music is mind-blowing at times, and always well played. These dudes are masterfully fluent in the languages of epic riffs and post-hardcore hits. Great shit, recommend. I love a review that does not understand a record. It was a comp. That's why the same songs were on that record twice. This is an LP. This is a studio album. It's different. But I don't expect them. Anyway. And then I found this weird Rate Your Music review that I was like, I kind of like this. It is from Rate Your Music user Pixies Fan Yo. All one word. Swear to Me marks a distinct change for the band, though, as the material here seems to be diving into much more eclectic territories. Brainworms have always embraced the style of hardcore that was made popular by groups like Split Lip and Grade. All of the group's discography bleeds of a melodic, hardcore influence, but the fact is they hardly ever sound that clean or restrained. Whether it is punk, hardcore, or even indie rock, Brainworms are able to spew a dissonant yet catchy mix of numerous genres. Swear to Me improves on Brainworms' former material by taking a more progressive approach. Blues-style solos, group vocals, and various studio techniques are taken to make their sound more layered and diverse. For reference, think Bear vs. Shark's evolution from debut to sophomore release.
Yeah, but they don't sound anything like Grade.
No, they didn't sound like Grade, no. I like the Bear vs. Shark comp, though.
Yeah, and that's more accurate. But
yeah, if it was like... Yeah, if Bear vs. Shark was busier, or if this was cleaner, then you would get a little closer to that Bear vs. Shark. But you can kind of see how they're kind of pulling from that same... They might even have the same set of influences as each other. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't usually get that many different reviews from actual things I've heard of, like Razor Cake, Maximum Rock and Roll, and Scene Point Blank. But yeah, I thought it was kind of interesting. Okay, what works for you? What doesn't work for you on this record?
I think the overall sound works for me. I think the overall idea of this music still works for me. Like I said, I think that it still offers something unique. The mix, maybe the sameness of some of the material, the way that it kind of runs into itself. I think it's hard to write this kind of stuff. So I think this music, I think you come to a lot of the same conclusions when you're trying to write songs like this. So I don't fault the sameness too much, but it kind of is just a little bit too much all the time. And I think if there was just a little bit more restraint in some of those songs, they would stand out more. Because really, like the most you get for dynamics are kind of in just the stop-start riffs.
Mm-hmm.
Where they're all kind of locked in on one big riff.
Yeah, because they played the same riff a lot too. Which even then, I noticed a few times on the record they're like playing the same like clean tone riff or chord at the same time too. Which I was like, that's weird. That's usually not. You're not usually doing two players doing the same clean tone. Yeah. I'm with you as far as like, yeah, the overall vibe works. I like the whole thing. I like the whole package. I like all the individual elements of the music. I love the vocals. Those are my favorite part of the record. But those really big riffs I really like on here too. I like the song construction. Like they're put together pretty well. It has some moving parts to it. Half a Life I thought was a pretty great song. Jay's Big Date's really fun too. I thought Which Words was really good. It's kind of got some different elements too. It kind of goes up and down. It's a little more dynamic. And then Which One has it's Whatever, That's How You Get Famous has that like spoken word intro to it. Then like the song kind of gets faster as it goes, and then like his vocals get more and more shouty as the song goes. It's kind of a long song too. It's like a 4-minute song. I think what doesn't work is honestly the last two songs. It's a short record. It's like a 27-minute LP. But even then I'm like, I might have should have ended on the pinnacle of storytelling. I think those might have been better closers. But yeah, what doesn't work for me, it's mainly the mix. That's what doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
I would like to hear what they're doing better.
Yeah, that's what it really needs. It just needs to be cleaned up just a little bit more. Not too much more, because the chaos and messiness of it is part of its deal. Mm-hmm. A lot of it, and it's really, fundamentally the band, I think it's kind of like if you put a second guitarist in the Minutemen and take out the funk riffs.
Interesting. You add a second guitarist, but they play the same thing sometimes?
They're playing the same style.
Yeah.
It's two double D Boons.
Yeah. 2 D Boons playing the same kind of things, but not the same riffs. Yeah.
So I think that's cool. Mm-hmm. It's like Fugazi, except it's 2 keys instead of a G and an Ian.
Yeah.
It's 2 guys doing the weird made up chords.
Where you're just like, is that a jazz chord? It's like, no, I just like made it.
I
just put my
held
finger.
A chord and then I lifted a finger off, and I don't know what to call it.
Yeah. It's probably some sort of like sustained diminished minor, but of an existing chord. But yeah.
Lots of flat 5s and 6s. And...
Yeah, I like it though. I like it. It's a good record. I like how it sounds. I also wonder too. This is their only LP. They have the comp, which is like their EP and their demo. I think they're a short record band because they just did splits. They did EPs. They didn't do. This is the only like full length studio recording they did. So maybe like that was a challenge. Maybe maybe that kind of lends to the sameness because they just kind of are used to doing like 2 to 4 songs only. But let's do a little aftermath. So Brainworms did reunite for Fest 12 in 2013, which we were there for, and it had been their first show in 3 years. And then Jay Moritz, he would go on to play in the band Snack Truck, and then sadly pass away in 2016. Vocalist Greg Butler would then go on to release a folk record in 2021. So when I made the joke about him doing a folk album, he actually did wind up making a folk album. It's called like Folk and Bluegrass on Discogs. So I don't know what that sounds like because he's not a good singer, like singer. So like, just imagine like that voice just doing folk music. Wow, we gotta play the guitar. All right. Well, did we win?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. I have this on CD. I have a CD copy. I think because that's what it is. I had ordered a copy of Trenches in the Manor by Amateur Party from Rorschach at one point, and I think the dude just forgot to send it or like check his email because it was like months later I got the package in the mail. It had the record. It had two copies of one of their 7 inches. No sleeves, just like the paper insert sleeve. 2 copies of that. And I think I got the Brainworms CD in there too. So I think he was trying to apologize for like taking so long to send it to me, but like, I don't know. That's cool. I got all that stuff. I like that. I would have dug my copy out to see if there were lyrics inside, but I don't know where it is because I just moved, so I don't know where everything is. It's in a box somewhere with the other CDs, but who knows where that is right now. So it'd be funny if I go find it and there's like a whole lyric book in there and like an essay on the band's history and where they came from and all this stuff. I guess I'll have to record an addendum if I find it, but I'm gonna rate it. I'm going 3.75. It's not quite a 4 for me out of 5. What about you?
I think I'm probably a 3.5.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. Yeah, I think that'll do it. So, cool. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Appreciate all of you for listening. We're thankful for each and every one of you. And, yeah, you can follow us everywhere on social media at PunkLottoPod. Voicemail line 202-688-PUNK. And our email address is punklotopod@gmail.com. Where are we following you, Dylan?
You can find me at Husker Dylan or Major Awards Band on most social media.
Is the single still slated?
Yeah, I mean, I scheduled it. I'm not pulling it down.
When's it drop?
It will come out on May 29th.
Oh, okay, so we got about a month. Okay. All right. Well, cool. Well, thank you all so much for listening. We appreciate you. And we will talk to you next time.
To order Punk, call the number on your screen. Rush delivery is available. Remember, this special offer is not sold in stores.